This is what we like to see. Folks talking, enjoying being together. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And we're just thrilled that we can all be together when it's not raining like it was a couple weeks ago, like it was yesterday. Sure does make for a beautiful Sunday morning, a little cooler temperatures. We are in Luke chapter 24. We're going to be camping out, doing a lot of walking. Hope you're ready for that. We're going to be doing a lot of walking on the road to Emmaus. In fact, in these verses 13 through 35, which tell us about the two disciples on the road from Jerusalem to Emmaus, there are a lot of terms that talk about walking, and we're going to observe them a little bit this morning. We are officially talking about post-resurrection appearances. We were talking about some empty tomb viewings, but now we're actually looking at actual appearances. This is all on the same day, early Sunday morning when Jesus rose from the dead. Jesus appeared to Mary Magdalene. Now there were two groups that went to the empty tomb. What was the first group? We talked about this 2 weeks ago, the women. And what were they intending to do? Prepare the body properly. And they're going to the tomb and saying, well, who's going to roll away the stone? Well, that was the least of their concerns. Stone was already rolled away. There's no body. But there were two divine messengers who said, why seek the living among the dead? That's right here in Luke chapter 24, verse 5. That's the first little section in this last chapter of Luke. Peter and John go to the tomb. That's the next incident. Do they see the Lord? No. So it's not technically a post-resurrection appearance, but it is an empty tomb viewing. Last week, we saw that Mary Magdalene had the honor, the privilege of being the first person to see the resurrected Lord. And we spent our entire class period slowing down, just looking at that little section in John chapter 20, verses 11 through 18. Very beautiful, very powerful. And then Jesus does appear to the women later, after they've already been rejected by the disciples. Apparently, there is some unrecorded correspondence between Peter and Jesus. You remember in Marc's account, they were told to go, the women who came to the tomb were told to go tell his disciples and Peter. Why is it so important that Peter and Jesus see each other? Because the last time they saw each other, Peter was denying for the third time that he even knew who Jesus was. We don't know a lot of details about this. Peter and Jesus will get together again. And that's recorded in John 21. And that will be a delightful lesson for us to see Peter take back all three of his denials and be reinstated in a relationship with the Lord. What we're looking at now is before sundown when, I was going to show you these verses here about him appearing to Peter. and Cephas. Let me keep up with my slides. I got a little distracted there. What we're going to be looking at now is Jesus appearing to two disciples. We only know the name of one of them. What was the named disciple? Cleopas. And there's some speculation. Well, why is it that he doesn't go ahead and name the other person? I mean, is it that Luke didn't know? And one suggestion is that maybe what Luke is doing is putting us right there with Cleopas, wanting us to imagine ourselves walking along the road to Emmaus. I don't know why he doesn't name the other disciple. Be that as it may, we're going to walk through this passage and see their response to the resurrected Lord. Emmaus. Let me put a map on the screen and field your comment here. Okay. Maybe the only person who spoke. All right, and we'll look at that. Another theory is it's actually his wife, because the masculine pronoun is used for both with a plurality of people as well as a male person. It's grammatically possible. I don't know how likely it is. But very interesting, very interesting. So Cleopas is most certainly the lead between the two disciples. There are a couple of things I want you to see here in Luke 24. One, the term must, or it is necessary, is used 3 times. And there are 3 sections in Luke 24, verses 1 through 12, which record the women going to the tomb, verses 13 through 35, which we're looking at today, and then verses 36 through the end of the chapter. And you have this idea of it's necessary. The Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, verse 7. The angels are reminding the women. Verse 26, it is Jesus himself. He was reminding Cleopas and his companion. Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer? The Christ must suffer. And then verse 44, when he is with his disciples, Jesus says, everything in the Psalms, in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms must be fulfilled. This is, for a moment, we're focusing on a feature of Luke. He is ending his gospel with 3 post-resurrection appearances. Well, the first one, they don't actually see Jesus. But it's emphasizing how all of this was by design. All of this had to happen. And that little word binds these 3 incidents together. So I've highlighted them in my Bible in verse 7, in verse 26, and verse 44. Also, I will remind you that we're on a journey. We're traveling. My ESV says this is about 7 miles away. That is translating what is literally 60 stadia. That's not our measurement system, but it's about 607 feet, my Bible says. 185 meters, if that is helpful to anyone. So this is the distance between Jerusalem and Emmaus. There are several Emmauses, which makes it even more difficult to understand exactly which one they are walking toward from Jerusalem. In the Gospel of Luke, momentum and moving around is a theme, especially when you look at the verses here, and they're going to be moving, walking away from Jerusalem. And in Luke's Gospel, there's something unique to Luke. In Luke 9, verse 51, it talks about Jesus setting his face to go to Jerusalem. And then there's that section, and what we look at here is these 2 disciples are leaving Jerusalem. And that's not right. That's not good, because where is the resurrected Lord? Where is the celebration of Jesus' resurrection? It's supposed to be in Jerusalem, but they're leaving Jerusalem. By the way, what do? What do these 2 disciples do as soon as Jesus leaves them? What do? They go back to Jerusalem immediately. So they went 7 miles that day, that Resurrection Sunday. Then they travel another 7 miles hurriedly. They want to go to the upper room where Jesus' disciples are. lot of walking, a lot of traveling, a lot of huffing and puffing, I'm sure. So let's walk through this together. I've got verses 13 through 16 on the screen. Let's read those verses now. That very day, two of them were going to a village named Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, 60 stadia. And they were talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing together, Jesus himself drew near and went with them. But their eyes were kept from recognizing him. Remember how Mary Magdalene did not immediately recognize Jesus in John 20? We're not told anything like this, that she was prevented. This is a divine passive. This is God causing this to happen. But it's that very day that these events happen. What day is that? Resurrection Sunday. That's exactly right. It's Resurrection Sunday. And what are these two disciples doing? Talk, 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 talk. Have you ever done that? Have you ever been walking with somebody and talking with them? You know, we can do that. Some people struggle with that. They can't walk and chew gum. Well, we're able to walk and talk, and that's what they're doing. So you see an emphasis on walking. You'll also see an emphasis on all this talking. And then just to emphasize it, their eyes are kept from recognizing him. Now, what will happen is that their eyes will be opened in verse 31. So here their eyes are closed, their eyes are opened. We're going to talk about that a little bit. All right, so as they're walking along, somebody joins them. Who is it? It's the resurrected Jesus. And they don't recognize him. So why not? Okay, they're prevented for some reason. And this is just delightful. Walking along, it's humorous, isn't it? They're talking about Jesus to Jesus, and they have no idea. You ever done something like that to someone where they don't realize they're talking to you in some setting? It's kind of unusual, kind of rather unique. Sometimes it may be mistaken identity, where they think they're talking to somebody else, a really important person, instead they're talking to you and you're acting like you're that really important person. Then this is a unique and humorous situation, and yet extremely edifying to us. I've got 17 through 19 on the screen. Let's continue. He, that is Jesus, said to them, "What is this conversation that you are holding with each other as you walk?" And they stood still, looking sad. This is my sad look. I'll be like Jenny, not Jenny, that's Jenny 2.0, Vicky, and put out my bottom lip when she's sad. Then one of them, named Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days? You don't know what happened in Jerusalem?" And then what does Jesus say? What things? Oh, I can't believe this guy. Boy. They said to him, concerning Jesus of Nazareth, a man, we're going to talk about Jesus in front of Jesus now, a man who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people. Verse 21 says, we had great hopes for him. We had tremendous hopes for him. So in this locomotion setting, now they're standing still. What's this conversation you're having as you walk? Then they stood still. They stopped and started talking to Jesus. Why did Jesus play dumb here? You don't recognize him, and he knows exactly what they're talking about and what happened. Why does he play dumb? Okay. He's wanting to get their perspective, to see what they would say. But wait a minute, Jesus knows all things. He knew what they would say. Okay, for our benefit. This is a teaching tool. Jesus is the master teacher, and he is using this as a teaching tool for them I mean, this is crucial. These are going to become two witnesses to his post-resurrection. Yes, ma'am, to his resurrection. Okay. They need to open their eyes to the scriptures. Yes, sir.
I also find it interesting, we're about to get to it, where, when the women went to tend to Jesus' body early, and they came back and told the apostles, they were rejected.
They were rejected. They didn't believe them.
These two didn't necessarily reject it.
Yeah.
They're thinking, what's going on? But
Okay.
they're holding out hope.
All right. That's a good observation. With the women, they had their doubts. They had their concerns. They were excited and joyful at this, but yet at the same time fearful. With the disciples, they just refused to believe them. They did not believe them. It sounds like maybe Cleopas and his companion aren't kind of believe it, kind of want to believe it. Yes, sir.
Kind of believe him, but leaves in Jerusalem where Jesus is probably going to be.
Yeah.
I don't think they believe that heavily at that very second, because when you read, he'll call them foolish men and slow and hard to believe, right? But so they says the women were amazed, and they went to the tomb early to find the body, and some of those went to the tomb, found it just exactly, and then we left.
Do you want to teach my class over? Yeah, isn't that fun? What you just read there is just delightful, where they're just, yeah, this and all this happened. And isn't it neat to be able to see a summary like this in this way? It's not, just a straight text. It's a narrative. It's being told as part of a scene and characters. Is that a hand? Nope. Okay, you're just kind of. All right. And don't you love what Jesus says here? What things? What are you talking about? What things? So they stand still, and one of them, named Cleopas, says, "Are you an idiot?" Later, Cleopas is going to go, "I just called Jesus, my Lord and Savior, an idiot."
I think it's funny. We might have the same feeling if somebody says, "What Super Bowl?" Say the Super Bowl comes to town.
Yeah.
Or the president is going to make a visit to this building, and then a day later, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Super Bowl.
This, especially in the book of Acts, you're going to see some humorous scenes. This is the same author. This is meant to be a little funny, especially since we're able to be relieved that Jesus is alive. It's all great. It's all good. All right, so Cleopas is the speaker. He is the main speaker. And Jesus says, well, what things? And he says, let me tell you about Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus of Nazareth. What about Jesus of Nazareth? Well, here's his description of him. He was a man. No, he was more than a man. He was a prophet. He was able to perform miracles, mighty in deed and word, before God and all the people. And we were really excited about this guy, but unfortunately, our chief priests and rulers delivered him up to be condemned to death and crucified him. What do you think Jesus' response is as a person? He's acting like a person who has no idea. You think he's going, what kind of facial expressions did Jesus have? Oh, really? Is Jesus lying here? Well, he didn't actually say, I don't know what's going on. But again, this is a teaching tool that he is using. Take a look at verse 21. This is from Cleopas. We had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the third day since these things happened. I really was hoping Jesus was the one who would redeem Israel. What does Cleopas mean by that? What were his expectations? To be delivered from Rome, to become the world's superpower. Yes, ma'am. To have a kingdom on earth. Yes, ma'am.
To take a step back to verse 20, I find it interesting that they do not take any responsibility for Jesus' death. I mean, we know the chief priests and the rulers were spearheading it.
Okay.
But the people were behind it all the way.
All right, so the people are culpable, but do you think Cleopas and his companion were one of those shouting, "Let him be crucified"? Surely not. Okay. I'm going to assume not, because I mean, even when it says that the Sanhedrin council condemned him to death, all the Sanhedrin, because Luke does that a lot, he'll say all this and all that and everything and everyone. And yet there were some members of the Sanhedrin who weren't, like Joseph of Arimathea. Okay, you're right. You're right. So not only is Jesus going to chide Cleopas, but so is Mom over here going to chide him on Mother's Day, of all days. All right. We had hoped that he would redeem Israel. What's the problem with that? He did redeem Israel. That's exactly what Jesus did. Not at all. Not in the same sense that they were expecting. At the very beginning of the book of Luke, of the Gospel of Luke, there was somebody else who was waiting for the redemption of Israel. And he was in the temple and saw the 8-day-old Jesus, Simeon. And the term redemption is used. He was awaiting the redemption of Israel. That's at the beginning of the book. This is at the end of the book. It kind of links the beginning and end together by using that term. The third day, what this is saying is this is 2 days prior. This is by our reckoning. This Friday, Jesus was crucified. He was in the tomb all day Saturday, rose from the dead early Sunday morning. Moreover, verse 22, we'll read verses 22 through 24 on the screen. Moreover, some women of our company amazed us. They were at the tomb early in the morning, and when they did not find his body, they came back saying that they had even seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but him they did not see. All right, what is this referring to? Verse 22, what is that referring to? They went to the tomb. All right. And this jives with the other gospel accounts, Matthew and Mark. It's early in the morning. So they had to wait on the Sabbath. They had to wait on the Sabbath, and it killed them to have to wait. But as soon as sunrise came, they were there at the tomb. They were there so that they could properly bury Jesus. Oh boy. Didn't work out the way they had planned, and how happy they were that it didn't. Who were the people talking to the women? Who were the people talking to the disciples? They were angels. And what do those angels say? Why seek the living among the dead? He's alive. So are they believing this? Well, not enough to stay in Jerusalem. They stayed late and said, you know what? It's getting late. We need to get back home. We better go. And they went back home. We're not done yet with highlighting something here. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb. What is that referring to? The events of John 20, not in Luke's gospel. John and Peter. All right. Well, now it's time for Jesus to speak. Verse 25. He said to them, O foolish ones, and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary? There's that word. Was it not, I'm trying to translate it. It was necessary. Jesus had to. He must suffer these things and enter into his glory. And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. Now, verse 28 then tells us that they drew near to the village. So I guess they started walking again after they had stopped and just talked with Jesus. And we can imagine that's unfolding. Jesus, this person who doesn't know anything about what happened, supposedly, is now chiding them. You foolish and slow of heart. How do you think Cleopas and his companion felt about that? And yet, they probably thought, well, you know what? This stranger is right. I don't know. I don't know what the reaction was. Can we be the same way? Can we be slow of heart to obey the commandments, to understand and comprehend and live out the commandments of the Lord? Of course we can. We also can hear the words of Jesus, "O you who are so foolish and slow of heart to obey me, to trust me." Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things? He had to, and you knew this because who told you? Who told you about Jesus dying on the cross and being raised from the dead? What prophets? Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel? Not specifically about his resurrection with all of those, but they talked about the throne of David being rebuilt. They talked about a Savior who would come and redeem Israel. And he says, you should have read that in the prophets. You also should have seen that in Moses, which would be referring to Genesis through Deuteronomy. Now, this is important. This is something that will be emphasized throughout the New Testament letters. But Jesus suffered and then entered into glory. 1 Peter especially emphasizes that even as Jesus suffered, the Son of God, God in the flesh, he suffered, then was glorified. Can we expect it to be any different for us? When we suffer, we say, "Oh, Lord, why are you letting this happen to me?" And what's the Lord's response to that? It's necessary. It's necessary. Why? Why is it necessary for us to suffer?
How are we being the little Christ if we are not?
The little Christs. That's what we are. We're imitating Jesus. We're living for him. If we aren't persecuted, what does that tell you? I'm not doing my job. I'm not obeying the Lord as I should. There's a passage in 2 Thessalonians. I'll just read this to you. The Thessalonian Christians were being persecuted. Why? Because they were Christians. They were being persecuted by their fellow Jews, suffering tremendously. And what Paul says is that this affliction that you are receiving is showing your worthiness of salvation. You're suffering, and it is a proof of your salvation, of your worthiness of the gospel. Now, what's going to happen to those who are persecuting them? They will suffer eternal damnation. We suffer in this life. When he comes on that day to be glorified in his saints, to be marveled at among all who believe, what he is doing is showing us that we are worthy of him, to be like Jesus, to suffer and then be glorified. Is that fun? Is that pleasant? No, but it is necessary. Just as Jesus suffered and then was glorified, so also are we. And Jesus goes on to tell them more things that we're not privy to. But this is what he says. Let me interpret to you the scriptures, all the scriptures concerning himself. Wouldn't you have loved to have listened to Jesus expound about Isaiah 53 and how he is the fulfillment of the passage that talks about how all the sins of humanity are laid on him. He became our sin offering. And to show how Jesus is the fulfillment of that. How he is, in Deuteronomy 18, he is the prophet who would come and save his people. All the passages Jesus could have turned to. And that's something we also want to be able to do ourselves, to appreciate and to understand all this was part of God's eternal plan to redeem humanity from sin. All the way back in the garden. When God said in Genesis 3:15, "I will put enmity between you, Satan, and the woman, between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, you shall bruise his heel." And we look to that as the first prophecy, messianic prophecy in the Bible as well. And it's referring to Satan trying to destroy Jesus through the crucifixion. But then Jesus, after his crucifixion, rising from the dead and crushing the head of Satan. That becomes a theme. Going back to the Garden of Eden. All right. Verse 28, we see more locomotion. Verses 28 verse 29. Let's read them. So they drew near to the village to which they were going. He acted, here's Jesus play acting again. He acted as if he were going farther. But they urged him strongly, saying, stay with us. Here's why. It is toward evening. The day is now far spent. So he went in to stay with them. Going, stay. There's also went. So the past tense of going. Locomotion here. Where is Jesus going to go? Well, it doesn't say, I don't think he really intended to go anywhere. He's toying with them. Is that okay for Jesus to toy with him? With them? Does it make you uncomfortable? Okay, that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to teach them. And of course, being good Jews, they're hospitable. They say, no, you need to stay here, spend the night here, because it's sundown. You need to stay here and eat with us. So going, stay. All right. Verses 30 through 32. When he was at table with them, he took the bread and blessed and broke it and gave it to them. And their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. I got to stop there. Hold on a second. Whoa. This isn't saying what I think it's saying, is it? So imagine the scene. They're ready for supper. Okay, boy, we've been walking. We're upset. Yeah, I'm ravished. Let's eat. Jesus takes the bread, as he always does. He prays for the bread. He blesses the bread. He breaks it to them. But does he eat it with them? No. Okay. And then all of a sudden, maybe it's the way he broke the bread, whatever it is, they were allowed then to recognize him. And he vanished from their sight. What does that mean? What it means? Jesus said, here you guys go. Okay, I got to go. See ya. Bye. No. What happened? Scotty beamed him up. Now, wait a minute. Last week we saw Jesus. No, we haven't. We haven't seen this yet, have we? Next week we will see Jesus enter a room through a locked door. How do you do that? Okay. He just appeared. Did he like Jack in The Incredibles, just kind of walk through the wall? Maybe that's what happened. It could be he just appeared, because here he vanished. And maybe that's what happened. He just suddenly appeared. Be it as it may, has that ever happened to you? Have you ever seen somebody right in front of you and just disappear? We see it in the movies. We see it on TV. Little kids see somebody right before your eyes. Here's another mom reference here. All right. All right. What Luke 4 says is he passed through them. And that is a miracle, that Jesus was about to be thrown off a cliff and then they can't find him. So I don't know exactly what happened. It seems that the post-resurrection body of Jesus can do some things. And why he didn't necessarily do them during his ministry, I don't know. But yeah, he's demonstrating his power here. And that is just so remarkable. He vanished from their sight.
Like all miracles, there's purpose for them.
Okay, so what's the purpose of this?
To confirm he is God.
To confirm he is God. And
He's the creator. He created the laws of nature.
okay.
They don't bind him.
And where does Jesus end up? He ends up in Jerusalem.
He's going to charge these guys up and send them back to Jerusalem to tell everybody, like, y'all never going to believe this.
Why didn't he just take him with him? Because now they have to walk 7 miles again or run.
Now they have 7 miles to contemplate what they saw.
Exactly. I love that. That is exactly what's going on, I think. I didn't think of it until you said it, but that's right.
This also is kind of confirmation to them of their belief, because they urged him to stay with them because, hey, it's getting dark. It's not a safe time to be.
That's right. And in the Mosaic Law, you're not supposed to be walking around after sundown.
After partial dinner, it's like, okay, we got to hustle back to
Yeah.
Jerusalem now. In the dark, who cares? Let's go.
All right. Mark also does this, emphasizes Jesus is the bread of life through talking about bread. What has Jesus just done? He has taken bread and broken it and given it to him. Why doesn't he eat any bread? Why doesn't he give any bread to himself? Because he is the bread of life. And he has just imparted to them the bread of life. And they are able to open their eyes and see the bread of life. How's that for symbolism? All right, he vanishes out of their sight, and what is their response? Shock, awe, joy, realization. Did not our hearts burn within us while he talked to us on the road, while he opened to us the scriptures? These are godly disciples who are confused, who are discouraged, and yet now have such vibrant hope. Yes, ma'am.
They also were disciples who did not know and understand the scripture. And now they do
Because he opened to us the scriptures. How important is it that we read God's word and learn from it? How many of you have been students of God's word for a long, long time and can go to a passage you have read 100 times and still find some nugget, some perspective, some angle that you never saw, some connection? Now, what scriptures are they talking about here? The New Testament that we spend so much of our time reading, and well, we should, because we're New Testament disciples. He's talking about the Old Testament. As Jesus will say here and later in chiding his disciples, in Moses, in the Psalms, and the prophets, a threefold division of the Old Testament. Yes, ma'am.
this was a spiritual sight that they now can see.
Okay.
It wasn't just at physical where they couldn't recognize Jesus at first. Now they not only recognized him physically, they recognized him spiritually.
All right. I love that. Yes, sir.
I think it's very important to believe scripture. But we are able to see and believe and be convicted. Believe is the statement of conviction.
Okay. These are witnesses who are giving their testimony.
The word, you have to believe the word. So the Mark chapter 1, verse 8, we read it out. The word of God is true. And so God can act on the word of God.
I mean, as we're reading through this, anybody getting goosebumps as you read this and slowly? I mean, you've seen this text many times, and yet we're sitting here going, oh, wow. Of course, here's Mom over here talking about goosebumps because of the air conditioning. But let me tell you what, it's perfect. Dwayne, it feels great. Oh, okay, never mind. I'm going to stop trying to read your mind. Glenn, okay, you've already made 3 comments, maybe 4. So, all right, go ahead.
I forgot what I
Oh,
was
no, okay.
This section right here is also kind of humbling to me, because these are not just unbelievers.
Right, these are
Laid
believers.
off Jesus and said, baloney, that's not real. They were upstanding Jews. They understood partially the Old Testament. They were trying to follow it, but they didn't understand how it applied to Jesus until he showed them, and they got excited about it. But these are people who have been exposed to the Old Testament their whole lives.
Yeah.
Thought they had it, and they missed it.
There's some good application there, isn't there? There's a sermon right there. I've got a bunch of hands and I still got things to cover. So let's get it. Go ahead.
Not everyone wanted him killed.
Not everyone wanted him killed, and
Still
certainly,
believed, but they didn't do
yeah,
anything about it.
they didn't.
felt
Okay,
like they couldn't.
all right. You're just parroting what she said, and that's excellent. That's excellent. Yes, sir.
What Ralph said earlier, we said that Jesus said, I need to do this, that all the prophecy be fulfilled. And what if it all was, he had made some great prophecy and it never got fulfilled?
Okay.
It was important that all of this testified to to his death, burial, and resurrection because we are not eyewitnesses.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, for me, I see them as people that were Jesus' death came quickly. I mean, within a 24-hour period.
Right. From the time he was arrested. And so they're in shock.
So that's going to be a shock. And then they're in mourning because they're the one they thought was going to deliver him from the Roman government. He's dead. So they're still in mourning. And when you're in mourning, God does not, it's not always righteous.
Okay.
And that's what I'm seeing.
And that's something really exciting. And my dad was just getting to this about the eyewitness element here. All the eyewitness testimony given to us in the Gospels, it's organic. It just happens. This isn't some, hey, Luke, what are you going to write about? Okay, John, this is what I'm going to say. You say this. It's not organized. It's a bit messy as we try to piece together all these post-resurrection accounts. It's vibrant. And so we need to see what's going on here and realize this is eyewitness testimony in a court of law. We're trying to prove that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. Well, here are two gentlemen right here who are saying, we saw him. We saw him. We conversed with him. We know Jesus is risen from the dead. I'm just going to show these passages very quickly about redemption, specifically in the Gospel of Luke. There it is with Simeon in Luke 1, verse 68. Anna also. Wait a minute. Luke 1:40, 68 is the prayer of Zechariah with the birth of his son John the Baptist. He's talking about how Jesus is going to redeem his people. Then you have Anna talking about Simeon. What did he say? He used another really important word. I think I got confused here between Simeon and Anna. It's going to bother me if I don't find it here. Come on. I don't remember the word. Consolation. There it is, verse 25. The consolation of Israel in Luke 2:25. It was Anna who talked about the redemption of Jerusalem. And then here at the end, we thought he was going to redeem Israel. Well, he was born to do this. He was prophesied to do this. That's exactly what Jesus did. He redeemed us. He became the one who redeemed us. He gave his life as a ransom, not exactly the same word, but akin to it. And then you can also see other places where it talks about Jesus giving himself as a ransom for us. He redeemed us and provided us forgiveness of sins. I'm sorry I'm having to return a little bit. Well, after they see the resurrected Lord, what do? The passage, Luke 24, 33 through 35. Just got about 3 minutes left. 2 minutes. And they rose that same hour and returned to Jerusalem. You should have never left. And they found the 11 and those who were with them gathered together. So they find the apostles, they're together, they're hiding in that upper room. And this is what they tell them. The Lord has risen. He has appeared to Simon. And so we don't know a lot of details about that. Then they told what had happened on the road, and how he was known to them in the breaking of the bread. A lot of times when people are praying the opening prayer, they'll mention, this is a long traditional phrase, be with the preacher as he breaks to us the bread of life. And what does that mean? Well, the word of God. And that's what they're talking about there. He broke the bread literally, but he also broke the scriptures to us. These are references to the 11 and 12. There is that appearance to Simon that is mentioned here, which we're not going to have time for, because I want to point out this, and this is how we're going to end our class. We're going to sing the chorus of this song, My Eyes Have Seen Your Glory. But here is verse 1. I have seen you walk down a dusty road. I don't know if that is specifically referring to Emmaus. It may be referring to him carrying his cross, because the next phrase goes on to talk about that. But The chorus talks about feeling Jesus, our hearts burning within us. Can we sing the chorus in light of how it's based on the road to Emmaus? My eyes have seen your glory. My hands have touched your face. My heart still burns within my breast from the warmth of your embrace. My eyes have seen your glory, my life forever changed. And when this journey comes to an end, I'll rest in your endless grace. Two phrases from that chorus we just sang. Our hearts burned within us. And then also, my life is forever changed. That's what these post-resurrection appearances are meant to do. And that's what the resurrection of Jesus does for us. It changes us forever. People who encounter Jesus, they never remain the same. They either hated his guts or they loved him. And as we walk on the road to Emmaus, the question becomes, what is our response to Jesus? How are we going to feel about him? And they told everyone what had happened on the road to Emmaus. Next week, Doubting Thomas. We're going to go back to John 20 and finish our study of the post-resurrection appearances. Doubting Thomas. Thank you.